Morning, everyone. Perek Bey's Mishna Hay. Tarmin batzel katan shalem v'lechatzi batzel gadol. We take truma from a small whole onion and not from half of a larger onion. So this is a continuation of yesterday's discussion about when you want to take truma from one thing for another, that you're supposed to take from the truma should be separated from the higher quality one. But then we also had a discussion, but then there was also an argument about, well, what happens though if a coin isn't present and the higher quality one will not last as long as something of lesser quality? What do you do then? So this Mishnah is a repeat of that. Tarmin batzel katal shalim lechatzi batzel gadol means we separate from the complete small one and not from half of the larger one. Now, typically, the larger one is considered the higher quality. But since it's not whole, it's not going to last as long. So our Mishnah is saying to take truma from the one that has a longer shelf life than from the one that's higher quality. That must be, as the commentaries point out, that we're talking about where a kohen is not available. This thing is going to have to wait until you find a kohen to give it to. And therefore, in this situation, it is considered separating truma from your choice produce when it's the produce that's going to last. And therefore, the one that's going to last is the whole smaller onion, although it's not as high a quality as the larger one that's already cut in half. Yehuda says, Loiki, not so. You, even in this situation, you shall separate truma from the half of the larger one, because as Rabbi Yehuda said in the previous Mishnah, that no matter what, the actual separation of truma, whether the kohen is present or not, is always to separate to do the actual separation of truma from the higher quality produce. And so did Rabbi Yehuda say, Tarmin betzal mibnei haMedina ala kufrim. We can separate truma from the city dweller onions over the village ones, or for the village ones, for the onions of the villagers. But not from the villagers' onions for the city dweller onions. Because the city dweller onions are the food of the politician, right? Sounds familiar? Politician, politics. It means it's the food of the politicians, of the nobility. The fact that in the nobility, they always eat the higher quality no matter what the cost. And since they eat the city dweller onions and not the villagers' onions, I guess this is the difference where these onions grow, in the city, in the villages. But being that the nobility eats from the city dweller onions, that means they'll have a higher quality. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says that you will always, if your question is taking truma from the city dweller onions for the villager onions, or the villagers' onions for the city dweller onions, you will always separate truma from the city dweller onions, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, you always separate truma from the higher quality, even if a kohen is not present. And therefore, and he just ends up saying that to prove that the city dweller onions are of a higher quality is the fact that the nobility eats them. So this again is a repeat of the machlok argument between Rabbi Yehuda and the previous Tana, and the Tana Kama, the first Tana mentioned, as to whether when a kohen, everybody agrees when a kohen is present, you give from the higher quality. But if a kohen isn't present, is the yafa, is the choice, is the best of your produce that which lasts longer, so that eventually so that it won't spoil before a kohen can actually eat it? Or does it always work with the separating of the truma from the higher quality produce, no matter what? The Sefer HaMitzvot. Prohibition against eating what is called a nevela. Shenemar, as the pasuk states, you shall eat any nevela. Nevela a nevela is, this word nevela, what is it talking about? Kol behema chaya v'oiv shemei alein. We're talking about any domesticated animal, any wild animal, any bird that dies on its own, or they were not properly shechted. Shechita, ritual slaughter, has very specific details how it has to be done, and if it's not done properly, it is not a good shechita, and the animal that died through a invalid shechita, through a shechita that wasn't done properly, is a nevela. So nevela means an animal that dies without shechita. If you eat the volume of an olive from this nevela, you would be liable to lashes. Now, if a person eats the volume of an olive from the flesh of the navel of the stillborn of a kosher animal, give birth to a stillborn, and you eat a kazayas of flesh from it, you have now transgressed eating from a nevela. It's an animal that died without shechita. It's an animal that no shechita was done on it. It's dead. It's a nevela. Now, the ramifications of that are the fact that now we have this, we're pointing out that the prohibition of nevela applies to a stillborn animal. One may not eat the offspring of an animal that just gave birth until the beginning of the 8th night of its being born. Because at that point of time, it now is the doubt of whether it's a stillborn is gone. Meaning we use the word stillborn, but actually if the animal were to die within a week, it's considered a nafel. It's considered a stillborn. It's considered a miscarriage, whatever words you want to use. And therefore, if it comes out, now if let's say if an animal is a nefel, right? If it's a nafel, it's a miscarriage, or it's an animal that's not going to live, then shechting it doesn't help. So therefore, what happens is like this. So it comes out that you have this, you have this baby calf, this baby lamb, whatever it is. If you were to eat it before 8 days, it could come out that you possibly were eating an nafel. You were eating a stillborn, because until it lasts for a week, it is a suffix nafel. It's in a state of doubt. Is this a viable animal or not? If it's not a viable animal, then shechting it doesn't help you, and it comes out then that you ate a nevela. That's the practical ramification here. The point is, if you eat a kazayas from the flesh of a nafel, right? Meaning, again, you only know if it's an nafel if it dies within a week. And if you eat a kazayas of its flesh, then it's going to be considered a nevela. Now, if you have, so now the point that Chavetz Chaim points out, until a week's time, you don't know if it's a nafel or not. And if it really was a nafel, the fact you shechted it doesn't help. And therefore, you're not allowed to eat from a newborn animal until it's a week old, until you hit the night of the 8th. Because at that point of time, it's going to go out of the suffix nafel. It's going to be out of the question of being a stillborn miscarriage. However, to qualify that, but if let's say you know that it went through the complete, it went through full term, right? It went through full term. Then what to take of kashanaylet? Then once it's born, right then and there, you can eat it. The question of a nafel by an animal is in a situation where you don't know whether it went through the entire, whether it carried it full term. If you don't know if it carried a full term and then it's born, well, it didn't go full term. Is it going to last? So that's called a suffix nafel. That's a question whether it is a miscarriage, stillborn. However, if let's say you know that it went through full term, then already we say we don't have to be concerned that it's gonna then we don't have to be concerned that it's a nafel, that it's a miscarriage or a possible stillborn. We know it went through full term, so therefore it's viable. And therefore, at that point, you'd be able to eat from it right away. This applies in all places at all times, by both men and by women. Have a wonderful day.